With the launch of my new website, www.therayhill.com, I, at age 70 years, will begin to reinvent myself again. I have spent 45 years in what is now known as the gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgendered movement. The world is a very different place for those of that description than it was in 1966 when I began. I have spent 36 years working on prison reform and an effort to lift prisoners and their families to a better level of self-worth and hope. That is a work in progress, but any recount of the milestones on the trail: restoration of voting rights for former felons, the Rayhill Bill, conceptualizing an inmate-staffed effort to teach those in prison about HIV/AIDS, hepatitis C and safe prisons, Wall Talk, a means to help prison gang members reject gangs and return to general population, GRAD, sobriety and more, is a lesson of how activist theory and practice can bring change to any arena where it is needed. Before those now iconic efforts, I was active in the Houston civil rights efforts, the free speech movement of the early and mid-1960s, and the anti-Vietnam War movement. While my parents were both adamant about stopping and eliminating Nazis and fascists from this world, I have yet to see a war in my lifetime I could support, making me effectively a national pacifist. So what is the new Rayhill about? I suppose I should begin where I am right now. I am currently in battle with the city of Houston over censorship and the control of choices adults have every right to make concerning their leisure time entertainment. Ironically, this is where we began the GLBT movement all those years ago. The distribution of our community communications was not allowed. Even letters from the late Dr. Franklin Canney to me were opened and read by postal inspectors and often were not delivered. The late Barbara Giddings rebelled in otherwise quiet libraries because books about homosexuals were locked in closed shelves and not available to those of us hungry to learn who we were. If you do not recognize those names, that is what Google is for. Fighting censorship was a major part of our struggle. We could not get a listing for a gay or homosexual organization in the Yellow Pages. Long after Playboy and Penthouse were readily available, store clerks were going to jail for selling Blue Boy and even The Advocate. Our clubs were subject to random raids where the police would make employees turn off the music, turn on the cleaning lights, and not allow the patrons to leave until their identification was checked. Arrests were also made at random, and the next day their names and occupations would be printed in the newspapers. Sometimes these raids were covered by television stations, and we could see our gay, lesbian, and transgendered friends trying to cover their faces in the glare of the lights in search of the lens. After Honest Parker became mayor, I approached HPD Chief McClelland asking for an end of the up against the wall, motherfucker raids. They were still going on in cantinas and men's clubs but had not happened in gay bars in decades. Why not, and why in other businesses? Our political success, in part because of the motivation to stop that kind of treatment, had ended our oppression. In my mind, oppression must be stopped even if it does not apply to me, and the fear of deportation made the Hispanic community vulnerable to police bullies. In the men's clubs, many of the patrons are businessmen from out of town, and some of the others did not want their wives to know where that meeting was taking place, so there is nobody left to complain. Chief McClelland understood and moved quickly to make HPD a more professional organization focused on real law enforcement and away from controlling the choices adults should be able to make. If the occasion arises, thank him for that. The city legal department, however, has not been responsive. I know from conversations I have had with Honest Parker over our long friendship that she too is opposed to censorship, but since she has been mayor, all of Steve Collins' 4 video stores have been closed, leaving 24 gay and lesbian employees out of work, and 2 of Eugene Etheridge's stores have been closed. All accomplished by Houston City Attorney David Feldman and his staff. I have approached him directly about these issues, asking only that these cases be handled like all other civil litigation cases before the city. In spite of his promise to do that, it has changed nothing. Ms. Nuria Iyer, Assistant City Attorney in charge of the control and censorship efforts, and Patrick Zuma, an outside attorney hired by the city to close video stores and adult clubs at considerable cost to the taxpayers, are using every resource at their disposal to further the closure of these businesses. In that process they have changed the meaning of the Texas statute and the city ordinance drafted in compliance with the statute, and has gone beyond the decisions of the appellate courts to close businesses and end the employment of now hundreds of people. Those who want to force control and expand censorship may be in favor of these efforts, but the effect has been to increase the number of adult clubs and video stores by more than 50% of those existing when Mayor Parker took her oath of office. If it is not working, why waste valuable resources doing it? At one point, Miss Iyer and the Republican judge in a civil court got into an exchange referring to gay-owned businesses as chosen lifestyle issues. When I raised the issue, the term disappeared for the transcript, but not from my memory and that of others. In a later court hearing, Miss Iyer was heard using the term in conversation with other lawyers. This battle will continue. The city will waste its resources on an effort unworthy of the first major city to elect an openly lesbian mayor on this planet. Businesses will be closed, jobs will be lost, but the newly reminted Ray Hill will not leave the picket line.